Oh, I happen to be using the first historical instruments recording that ever came out, and I bought it, and I've used it ever since for no good reason, except pure laziness. And, oh, well, no, there's one other reason. This is a recording by Roger Norrington. And there are some strange things about it. One of the things Mr. Norrington is trying very hard in this recording to do is observe the original metronome markings that we have from Beethoven for this symphony. And some of them are sort of odd. People think they're odd now. But, and so because people don't like them, I was raised on a recording by Arturo Toscanini. And it's different from this. And so when I first heard this, I said, that's wrong. That's too fast. That's too slow. But what I was really doing is saying, this is not the way I'm used to it. And there are some interesting problems in Beethoven's metronome marks. And some people said, oh, that's so wrong. Beethoven's metronome must not have worked. Well, of course it worked. And this is the moment of the metronome, you know. Have you ever thought that Mr. Melzel, you know, Mr. Melzel, if you've played piano music and you know what a metronome mark looks like, it says M period equals something or other, or quarter note equals 60. That means you set your metronome to click 60 times a minute, and you play a quarter note every time the metronome clicks. Mr. Melzel invented the metronome. It's an upside-down pendulum. There's probably nobody here old enough to remember the mechanical metronomes. Now everybody has little things that are electronic. But you can tell. You remember? Do you remember how they're shaped? Do you remember that they're shaped like an obelisk? Do you remember that they're shaped like a piece of early 19th century Egyptian-esque furniture? Have you ever thought about that? That's when it was invented. It was invented by Mr. Melzel, who also invented a wonderful instrument called the panharmonicon. It was a great big mechanical musical instrument that played drums and played trumpets and did all sorts of things. And he was going to take it all around Europe if only he could get Mr. Beethoven to write him a piece for the panharmonicon to play. And they would share the profits. And Mr. Beethoven did. And he called it Wellington's Victory. And it's about the victory of the Duke of Wellington. I think it's not about the victory at Waterloo. It's about a victory in Spain. And later, Beethoven reorchestrated, he took it back from Mr. Melzel. The trouble is that panharmonicon only made it about 5 miles out of Vienna, and then it bogged down in the mud. And neither of them made any money. And Beethoven took his music back and made it into a piece for orchestra, which we still hear sometimes today. But originally, it was for a big mechanical musical instrument made by the same man who invented the metronome, and the metronome was not broken. I mean, Beethoven was personally acquainted with the inventor of the metronome. And he could get his fixed if he needed to. But there are a couple of interesting problems, and one of them we've just heard. The place, that accelerating place that goes from the scherzo into the trio. And there's a metronome mark here, and then there's the stuff that goes da 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 dum bum bum, and it says accelerate, and then Beethoven gives exactly the same metronome mark. That is, how can you accelerate go from this speed, accelerate, and arrive at the same speed? How do you do that? That's an interesting question that people, well, Mr. Norrington tries his hand at that, and I think it works. He accelerates, and he arrives at the trio, and you think you've arrived at a new place. And you don't quite realize it's going the same speed. That's the other reason for buying this recording. I'm sorry, that's a really long answer to what record do you use. But isn't that interesting about Mr. Melzel and the metronome?